Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the FAR Show, Football Analytics and Reviews. So today we're going to discuss since there's no club football, we'll be discussing mostly about international football, and since the transfer window has started, we'll be discussing more on transfers. A lot of things happened in the past week, and really sorry we couldn't upload the episode earlier. We were supposed to upload it on Tuesday. We'll be regular in that. Yeah, so moving on. Transfers. We'll just first start with the transfers. So there was a huge problem, like Gini Wijnaldum transfer fiasco. He's going to Barca, he's going to PSG, and so Elijah, what do you like to say about that? I guess you would have been hearing about it a lot.
One thing, I am actually genuinely happy that Gini is not coming to Barcelona, because after what Liverpool had done to Barcelona in their incredible comeback, you should technically not be having or wanting to have good memories of a person who has done that to you. So in one way, I think it's good that Gini is not coming here, because Barcelona's academy is producing good midfield players, which Koeman refuses to use for some weird reason, and maybe he knows more than we do, of course. But then, so if Gini had come, he could have been blocking another youngster. Like as we know now, Moriba is coming up, De Jong is a mainstay, and Busquets is slowly being phased out. So Ricky Puig might come up, and Sergio Roberto is now playing in a rotational role in the midfield because right back is now covered. So things like that, and like they're trying different systems. And either way, like Barcelona has been known to produce good midfielders. And if you want any examples, you can look at Javi, or you can look at Iniesta, or anybody else. So they are known to produce good youngsters, especially in the midfield. So by buying players from outside, you're basically curbing your own creativity, you're blocking the path for your own youngsters. So that is one thing that I think after Laporta comes, they would have wanted to better. But then if you could get someone like Wijnaldum for free, obviously it's a steal. So I understand why they were interested in the deal, because they would have got him for free, and they were only offering around 3.5 million as their salary. So now the part about PSG comes in. So apparently the day he was scheduled to have a medical camp in the Dutch training sessions, wherever the Dutch were having their training sessions, the night before that, apparently PSG made contact. Apparently they were in contact for some time, because he's a free agent and he can talk to anybody. They were in contact for a while, and the night before the scheduled Barcelona medicals, PSG offered him double the salary. And if you actually look at the figures, it's more than double the salary. Barcelona were willing to pay 3.5. The initial figures that is out in the news is that Wijnaldum is being offered 9.5. That is more than double. That's way more than double. So for a player at around 30 years old who's out of contract at Liverpool, so whatever money he can get, he will get it for himself. So that is a brilliant move for Wijnaldum on personal terms, but it also shows how much the market has now become more money oriented. I'm not saying it's wrong for players to take money first, because it's their career. They are being burned out. They have to play all that. They have to take all the risks, especially in the pandemic. I understand all of that, but this shows how much the market has turned, because and obviously Barcelona were being extremely stingy by offering only 3.5 million. So they have no excuse, but it, of course, like the thing of good faith and verbal agreements is no more a thing in football. People can just hijack deals at any time, and this deal is a very good proof of that.
Yeah, that's true actually. And on his part, I think he left Liverpool mainly based on the wage issue. Like he had asked Liverpool for high wages and they refused, and the contract they let it run out. So he would have been expecting at least something similar or even higher than that. So in the end you're right. They're also humans. I think they want to earn money in this time, especially since nowadays players are being to work their ass out, this competition, that competition, new nations leagues, everything it's without. So what they'll do is, right, they only have around 15 years in a career, and rest all depends on how you invest the money you have in that you make in that time. Yeah. So moving on, coming on to Spurs and another saga with Antonio Conte. So if you don't know, Antonio Conte has left Inter having a fallout with the management because he wanted to keep all the players, and the management were planning to sell many of those star players. So in the end, Conte, and he has to have his own say in the transfers. So he ended up resigning his job, and now he's a free agent. So Spurs have contacted him, and at first it was all going good, and they've even reached out to the former Juventus sporting director Patrici, who just resigned recently when Juventus brought in Allegri. And that's also, Patrici is also very close to Conte, and they were supposed to bring him in, but now what's it's been said they have been a fallout because Conte is asking for a little bit more higher salary, and the main thing is that he wants to sign in a lot of players, and Daniel Levy is little bit resilient on that. Sorry, he's not into that actually. And Elijah, over to you. Do you have anything to say regarding that?
Yeah, at one point it looked like it was certain that Conte was going to Spurs, and a few of my friends who were Spurs fans were actually excited. But even if Conte had gone to Spurs have traditionally not been known to spend heavily in the transfer markets, and the way Antonio Conte sets up his teams, he needs a certain style of player. So wherever he goes, it takes him like at least a season before he gets all the players that he needs, and after that he pushes for the title. And it's very rare that a team is already set up for him where he can go from the beginning itself and try and win. So he takes time to assemble the players that match his style of playing, who follow his instructions to the dot, and all of that. So even if Conte had gone to Spurs, it would have been tough. But then Spurs are, like I said, they don't like spending obnoxious amounts of money, and Conte needs to sign multiple players because this present Spurs team does not suit him. So it never looked like it was going to happen, like for sure. At one point it did look like it might happen, but it never looked like it was going to happen for sure. And then the news came out saying that due to excessive financial demands they couldn't go ahead with it. So in one way it's good, but then the other thing is Conte, I think he left because he was expecting the Real Madrid job, and that didn't work out. So it's a sad story for him because Real Madrid went back to their former coach. That's a topic for a whole different day. I think we should actually write a script and make a video on this about why they've gone back, because I've read a few articles and it's a very interesting topic. So it is not working out for him, and at least Tottenham was a half decent club. I don't know where he's going after this, and he might, for all we know, remain without a club. And that again brings us back to Spurs. Who are Spurs going to hire? Like, it doesn't look like they have got anybody, any big name lined up for this thing. They wanted Pochettino back, but that's not happening because apparently Pochettino was involved in the hijacking of Wijnaldum's deal. So all of that. So Spurs are like left high and dry in the middle of nowhere, and like firing Mourinho because apparently Mourinho was opposing Daniel Levy's decision to make Spurs a member of the supposed Super League. So he confronted him about that, and that's why apparently he got fired. So we don't know, but that is the news. So maybe he did a good thing, and you could say whatever it is, but like, you lost a good manager when you had him, and now there is nobody else to take over. So you might have to manage with Ryan Mason, who is right now managing your squad. But apparently they are also looking at the Ajax manager. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not pronouncing it out of respect for him. I don't know if that will happen. It might happen, but then why would he leave Ajax, who is winning, for a team like Spurs who have not won and I don't know how long. So that's a whole different thing. So
yeah, it's a bad situation for Conte right now. I think Inter have already confirmed their new coach, Lazio manager Simone Inzaghi, so he can't go back also. So it's a tough situation for him, but yeah, he can find a club. And it's still the start of a transfer window. Things can go haywire in between. 2 months are left. So yeah. Moving on. Do you have anything else to add on in that?
About the
Yeah.
Conte thing? Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to add about Conte. Like, the Spurs are looking really shaky now. I don't know what they're going to do next season. We have to talk about the sporting director that they hired, though.
Yeah, Patrici. So yeah, Patrici was actually sacked as soon as Allegri came in, and he's pretty good, I guess. But he has had his fair shares of criticism, and it's a pretty bold move on Spurs side because he has just been sacked by Juventus because they couldn't win the title and it was going haywire in there. And we'll have to see how he works. And I don't think, have they ever hired an Italian sporting director before? I've not heard. I don't think so.
I don't know. I think this is their first actual sporting director because Daniel Levy has been handling all their decisions. So I think this is the first time they have a proper director of football or whatever his position is now.
Okay, that's okay.
So, yeah.
In that way, I guess it's a good move for Spurs, I guess, and it will help in their negotiations definitely. So, moving on, I'd say there's an interesting thing that happened in the week. Arsenal being put back in the pecking order, if I'd say. It's like rubbing salt over the wound, you can say right now. And Elijah, would you like to carry? I think you would have heard also about that.
It is very sad to see what has happened to an erstwhile big club like Arsenal because I'm sorry for laughing, but I don't know how to put it in normal terms. How can a player who's just been promoted to the Premier League, so basically till now they're not in the Premier League, they're going to come to the Premier League essentially. They're still a championship club, second division.
If you don't know whom we are talking about, it's about Emi Buendia. Is an Argentine footballer. He's playing for Norwich City right now, who just won promotion. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we need context. No? Good. Thank you for providing it. I'm just assuming everyone knows when I'm talking. Sorry. So yeah. So Aston Villa, let me just look up where they finished last season. Do you know where they finished last season? Jitu, I'm asking only. I don't know. Let me just look it up. I'll cut this out. Yeah. So Aston Villa finished 11th last season. Arsenal finished 8th last season. And a person coming from a club that is still in the second division of English football, who is getting promoted, chose a team that finished lower than Arsenal over Arsenal. And there are multiple factors to take into consideration. One is that, at Arsenal he might not get enough game time. He might be in a rotational capacity in the squad or whatever else, because Arsenal is known to do things like that. They have bigger players, bigger names on field essentially. So that could be one of the factors why he chose Aston Villa over them. But then you also have to realize that Arsenal were ready to pay the money.
Yeah.
And if Arsenal were ready to pay the money, I'm not saying that it confirms that he is going to start every game, but it means that he was going to be an important part of their plans.
Definitely, yes.
It means that he was going to be an important part of their plans. And despite them showing so much commitment to a player and essentially confirming that yes, you are a very important part of our plans, you are going to be used in so as a role, they would have had this conversation. And despite all of this, if he chose Aston Villa, I think it shows how far Arsenal have fallen in the last 5-6 years. And no one wants to trust them, especially Ozil. What happened was a different thing, and it was for many other political reasons and not only the playing part. So other than that, their own academy products are being loaned out to play at Leeds, Sheffield or whatever, and other clubs. So I think maybe their project did not inspire him so much that he could not commit his immediate future to Arsenal, which also means Arsenal don't have a good plan for their immediate future that a person coming from the second division could trust him with his future. So it doesn't look good at all, especially
and he's
when
not
you
even
look
old. Where he's
from the
he's
outside.
24 years old. He's relatively young player. So for him to switch change. I mean, Aston Villa. No discredit to Aston Villa. Aston Villa were a huge club back in the day, maybe 30 years back or something like that. And as of now, Arsenal, they were supposed to be a Big Six club and to join the European Super League, and it's pretty bad to see this happening, I guess. How much we criticize Arsenal, so I hope they can find a way out of this and get a good season next season.
And as I think this shows how these billionaire owners are essentially spoiling football as a whole. I think we should talk about this in a whole
Another episode
once. Like, they treat football like a business more than like a sporting establishment. They put money in it and they want immediate returns. Like, one of the clubs you can see this very clearly is Manchester United, because they are a public company and they're on the stock market. You can see how much money is going out of the club every year, and you know that there are these humongous payouts to the Glazer family going out every year. So I think now football has, like, if you look at Chelsea, the owner pours money in because, I don't know, he loves his club.
He loves winning.
He wants to see them improve. It doesn't look like he cares much about how much the club is giving back to him, what it adds value to him and all. He knows that this is my club, they need to win, and I will spend. But not all owners think that way, and Glazers are one, the Kroenke family who own Arsenal are one, because Spotify actually offered to buy, one of the Spotify owners or co-founders or whatever he is, he offered to buy out the whole club from him. But in case you didn't know, the Kroenke family, who are the owners of Arsenal, that guy and his wife together are the richest couple in the whole world. They are a gazillionaire couple. So they're the richest couple in the whole world, and he has no pressure on him to sell. And despite that, they are very wary about their decisions in the transfer market. And I think because of that, the manager can't get the players he likes, and because of that, the manager can't have like a great vision for the future, which will all obviously hamper anyone who wants to join, because anyone who wants to join wants to know what plans. Because when Willian was joining, he was like, I want to win the Champions League with Arsenal. Obviously that didn't happen. But like, when you join, they'll have such discussions. And if a player is choosing a club ranked lower than you and who've been consistently performing and finishing in the table lower than you, it means that the immediate future looks bad and players are not going to be convinced. And even if they're going to try and make signings in the immediate future, it doesn't look good, because if a player like that has left, the other big players will be wary of coming in, and unless you're going to give them inflated salaries, which they're already not doing, they will not join. So I think I should stop my Arsenal rant for now.
Okay. So moving from Arsenal, Gigi Donnarumma. So he's a hot prospect out there, 22-year-old goalkeeper, already Italy's number one, already amassed 200 appearances for AC Milan in the Serie A, and he's a free agent. I mean, anybody can buy him right now, except maybe his wages are a little off high for a 22-year-old, and even for a goalkeeper it's very high. I mean, but he's still, anybody who buys him right now, they're just set for next 10 to 15 years. So your views on that, Elijah?
Okay, a little context on Donnarumma. Donnarumma started playing on the highest level since I think he was 17. He came through the youth ranks at around 16 and consistently started playing from 17. He's 22 now and he already has 6 years experience. At 22, he has 6 years experience at the highest level of football.
This is not academy.
And that is... and it's not academy football, at the highest level of football. He has played for AC Milan since he was around 16-17. That's 6 complete years of experience for a 22-year-old. So for people who are going to buy him, obviously, yeah, the reported wages per season is supposed to be around 10.3 million. What PSG are offering him right now is 10.3 million per season for a goalkeeper, which is obviously high. I'm not saying it's low, but you also have to consider that he's only 22 years old and he already has 6 years of experience, and he's done reasonably well. It's not that he's sucked and all that, and his stats speak for themselves. So if at all, okay, we're not putting a video for this, so the spoiler doesn't matter. So if we make a small part for this, I'll put up the stats for him. He's made 251 appearances for his club in all his competitions together and has 88 clean sheets. He has 88 clean sheets already by 22 years of age. Imagine the how many years he can play for your club and already how much experience he has. That is insane value. I understand the wages are high, but if a club can afford him, if any club can afford him, it has to be a club like PSG.
Yeah.
And I know they do have a brilliant goalkeeper right now in Courtois, but no harm in backup is there, and no harm in like healthy competition. So yeah.
So yeah, Gigi Donnarumma is, I mean, many goalkeepers start their career at 21, 22 they break into the senior team. It's different for them. See, goalkeepers mature at a different rate, usually because the goalkeeper that is in your team will be lasting for a longer time. So it's hard for young goalkeepers to come in. For him to come at such a young age, I mean, only midfielders and forwards usually come at that age, mature that fast, and he is an imposing figure also. He's I don't know, he's 6'3", 6'4", something. He's very tall. He's very tall for a guy of his age, and he's a commanding figure. And best of all, if your team needs, he's a penalty specialist. His record in penalties are insanely good for his age. And any team who is getting him, you have a very good guy. I mean, anywhere he's going, I think he will definitely be the starter. I don't think he would want to be second fiddle. So that's a bit of an issue going in PSG, because Navas has been in brilliant form. He has done very good. I don't think they can criticize him for anything. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Oh, I completely forgot about Keylor Navas. I was talking about Thibaut Courtois and all. We have Keylor Navas, Thibaut Courtois, and now Donnarumma almost confirmed. And you were asking about his height. Donnarumma is 6'5". He's 6'5". Okay, if you want context, if you know how tall Van Dijk is, this fellow is an inch taller than him.
So you should see the speed. See, the taller the goalkeeper gets, it's very hard to get down. See, he doesn't look like he moves at the speed of a maybe a shorter goalkeeper, but he's super tall. So that gives him huge advantage. He can just reach the post. He's looking at that guy, I am a goalkeeper myself. That's what every goalkeeper wants to be like. He's very gifted, and probably if a goalkeeper is to win the best player in the world in some time in the future, if at all it happens, maybe this guy could be the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that brings us to a close about Donnarumma. Anything else to add about Donnarumma?
Nothing else.
The only problem right now, the whole market is almost every major club has already sorted out their first keepers by now. Like if any club you look at, not like any big club, because a player like Donnarumma leaving AC Milan at 22, looking for maybe higher wages, would not go to a smaller club. And if any club has to afford him, it has to be among the bigger clubs. And now the added incentive is you don't have to pay a transfer fee for him because he's a free agent right now. So you can get him for free, but you also have to pay a lot of money as wages, which makes sense. It's a trade-off. You don't have to pay a transfer fee. You can afford to pay him more. The problem is, one, his agent is what is his name? Mini Raiola, whatever his name is, that super agent guy, who is a pain in the ass for every team. Almost every club on planet Earth hates him from the bottom of their heart, and which means he is only very good at his job, which means he makes a lot of money for his clients and for himself, which means the clubs have to spend a lot of money, so basically what I'm trying to say is his agent is super good, so nobody is going to get him for anything less than what PSG is going to offer now, because PSG have already started off at 10.3. If anybody wants him, they are either going to have to match that offer or increase it.
Definitely.
So that is one bad thing, one thing not working in his favor. The second thing is, every club has already sorted out their starting keeper, and if you're going to pay a keeper around 10.5 million, you're not going to want him to sit on the bench.
Definitely.
So right now, the whole conversation is not about which team he's going to. It's going to be about which team is willing to make their first choice keeper sit and make this new guy play. Which is a very controversial thing to do, because you can't do that to a person who's already played 1 or 2 full seasons for you, and you just get a new guy who's far younger than him.
Yeah.
And you're going to make him play and make the guy who's already played for you sit. So that's going to cause some dressing room issues. But if there's one club that can do that, and I think that is the only club in the world that can do that is PSG, because they have a shitload
Yes.
of money. They have a shitload of money, and they don't care about who thinks what. They have there was even talk of Messi going to them, and they are like, why can't we talk to Messi? Messi is technically a free
Yeah, even
agent.
Ramos also.
If I'm not saying it will happen,
Ramos
the
is set
chances
to-
look very unlikely. But imagine if they sign Messi also, Neymar on the left, Mbappe through the middle, Messi through the right, Di Maria right behind them, Donnarumma in the back, and if they manage to get any good defenders, that team will be outrageous. And this is a club that can do that. They have the money to support such talent, and they're getting them for free, so they will be willing to pay a lot of money
Yeah.
as salaries. And they also don't care about offending anyone's ego, because if I'm giving you 10 million and I'm going to make you sit on the bench, I'm giving you 10 million for not playing. So you better shut up and take the money. You might not be playing, but you're getting the money. And if nothing works out, they'll just send them out on loan. So it works in a way, but the only club that can pull that off is definitely PSG. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think
Stuck.
something we should next our topic, I guess it would be on Jadon Sancho. See, Dortmund have said that they were willing to sell Jadon Sancho for around 80 to 85 million, and so it gives United an opportunity. It's still a bit high, maybe for during this pandemic, and I mean, but it's still achievable. It all depends on whether the Glazers are willing to pay up the amount. Yeah, over to you. Like, it's been something that has been going on for last 2 years. Do you have anything to add? You can add.
Yeah, the thing is, last year also United offered around the similar figure, around 85 million. At the most, I think 90 million was what they offered, and Dortmund was like nothing less than 120 million or something in that ballpark. And United said, no, we can't afford that. So apparently now Dortmund are listening to offers, and they are okay with figures around 85-ish. So 85, 87, something like that is what is out in the news right now. And I'm talking only right now because I only read about the transfers today. So the next part of this whole talk will be only Jittu. So yeah, it's reported that around 87 million is what Dortmund are willing to accept. I think the lowest thing I have read on the news is around 81 to 82 million. Highest is around 87 million. So around 80 to 90 million, you're getting Jadon Sancho. And I'm not saying that he's a bad player than what he was last season, but if you look at this thing, he peaked again at the end of the season. He did become better. Obviously, he did. But at the beginning of the season, I think because of this transfer saga, the uncertainty, and whatever else, he didn't seem to be at his best. He was kind of invisible, according to me. Like, he was playing almost every game, but he seemed very invisible. Like, he obviously didn't make up for it at the end. Like, he was making brilliant goals, making good runs and all that. So the other conversation to be had is, yes, United are getting him, but who is he going to replace in the team?
Very true.
He plays as a right winger primarily. The other, and he can also play as a left winger, so the other flank. And if nothing else works out, he can play the attacking midfield. So let's look at United right now. Attacking midfield, they've got that covered. They don't need jack shit there. Who plays on their right wing, Jit, if you can please enlighten me?
Marcus Rashford.
Okay, yeah. Who plays on their left wing?
Mason Greenwood. Oh my God, that's okay. That's a problem right now for them right now. I mean, I don't.
Exactly. And we might have got their positions a bit mixed up. Maybe Rashford can play on the left,
Yeah,
and
Greenwood definitely
Greenwood
can
clear
play
through the
in
right,
both
or
the
whatever
wings, I
it is.
guess.
So yeah, and you look at it either way. Both of them are from your academy. Both of them are players that you have been pushing, and they also have Daniel James sitting in the back, who's also a forward.
Yeah.
They have Cavani up there, and whoever else to play. They have the guy who was injured, Martial, who's there. So it's not like they have any less number of forwards. Getting Sancho in for 90 million again brings up the same thing that I said with Donnarumma.
Yeah.
You are going to pay 90 million for a player. You're definitely not going to make him sit on the bench. We're going to talk about Donny van de Beek, I think, in the off script, so I can talk about it that time. So if you're going to pay 90 million for a player, you're definitely not going to make him sit. And if he's going to play, and if he's going to shift from Dortmund to United, Dortmund is where he's getting regular game time at the highest level. He gets to play against teams like Bayern Munich day in and day out. So if he's going to come to United, it means that they have some sort of a guarantee, he has some sort of an assurance that he might play in at least all of their games, or at least start some of the bigger games. So there should be some kind of agreement like that. Otherwise, he would not be willing to come there. And his agreements have already been in place.
They can't just put him in the bench, especially also since he's coming for such a huge amount of money. They definitely can't do that, and it will be a problem right now because when they were scouting Sancho, maybe some of these players were not that good. I think maybe Greenwood was just coming up, like when this whole Jadon Sancho came in. I think for Rashford had struggled with form, I guess, and they had some issues. But as of now, I think they have a pretty good squad, and now Sancho coming in, and I hope definitely that he won't be like another Donny van de Beek, and he also would never want that. And I hope they can find a suitable formation so that he can also fit in. And yeah, we'll see what happens. So
as I was saying, you're not going to pay so much money for making him sit. So if you're going to play him, it means you are going to leave someone out. And I can guarantee you it's not going to be Marcus Rashford. He's a crowd favorite. He's a brilliant player. So you're not going to make Rashford sit down. Which means you're going to play him on the right wing, which also means he's going to be blocking the route of maybe your own academy products who might have to leave out on loan or should be used as backups, which is again not favorable. Understand, yes, Rashford also is not Rashford, sorry, Sancho also is pretty young, so around the same age as these academy graduates, but these are the people you're getting for free and for such low wages. Technically, compared to Sancho, they would obviously be at a lower wage. I don't understand what is the logic here. Like I've always said this, even I think the last year when we were talking about United transfer policies, I am not understanding what is happening there. Like Donny van de Beek was supposed to be a backup. I literally have seen him twice play in United shirt. He might have featured more, but like twice I have seen him actually make his seen him on the field. Whatever else time he has played, he's literally been like non-existent. So why would you spend money on a player? And Van de Beek is by no means a bad player. He's a very good midfield player. He's a workhorse, extremely great work rate, goes up and down. All of that is brilliant. But you didn't use him. And if you're not going to use a player, why buy him? I understand you needed him for bench strength, but you literally never used him. And if that is going to happen and Sancho comes in, would that mean that Greenwood will go out, or Daniel James will go out, or whoever else will go out for loan, or you'll sell them? So that's a very interesting conversation to be had. Maybe if we do a United episode, we can cover that.
No, I have a small correction to make. I said earlier Marcus Rashford is right wing. I'm still really sorry. He's actually primarily a left winger, and he also plays as a forward. So I got mixed up between Greenwood. Greenwood is the right winger as of now, and he's also very good in other. As I mentioned earlier, he's also good in other positions in the left. Also, he can come in the middle. Also, it helps him as he's a two-footed player. So I guess I don't think they will directly. I mean, Rashford is the fan favorite, and definitely the manager also likes him, and he's sort of a captain figure there. And it will be tough. I don't think Sancho will definitely won't want to sit on the bench playing behind Greenwood. Definitely, he's especially has much more experience, and he's much more older than him. And he was given a primarily he was a starter at Dortmund, so he'll be expecting at least that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I guess, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah. So I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the transfers. I guess we covered like all the big transfers. If there is any other transfers, like you can also let us know to cover on some topics, like some transfer saga that's going on. Just let us know in the